Hello and welcome to Link Ahead, the City of Dublin podcast. I'm Lindsay Weisenhour, Director of Communications and Public Information.
And I'm Bruce Edwards, Digital Brand Manager. It's January, new month, new year, and we're so excited to kick off Season 2 of Link Ahead. Looking back, we sure did a lot in Season 1.
We did, and I'm so glad we renewed ourselves for Season 2, Bruce. We talked with a Broadway Award winner.
We said goodbye to one city manager and hello to the next.
We announced a Grammy winner's gig for Independence Day, and I have to say that was by far our most popular episode.
Absolutely. We talked with the host of an international event in our own backyard.
We talked with leaders about what's next in Dublin.
We did all that and managed to sing a few songs and even brag about our pickleball game.
Well, I don't remember singing or bragging about my pickleball game, but thanks to you, our loyal listeners, we had thousands and thousands of downloads of Season 1, and that's just from 16 episodes.
Because your feedback has been so positive with these conversations, we're planning even more episodes this season.
And we have to give a shout out to Scott Light, our podcast producer and Dublin resident, for helping us with all of these podcasts.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, so let's kick off Season 2. And we are starting off strong with our special guest today, ready to talk about new initiatives for residents and businesses, what we can learn from other cities, her cool world travels, why one author of business books is her absolute favorite, and how the census helps Dublin. Please welcome to Link Ahead, Vice Mayor Cathy de Rosa.
Thanks, Lindsay. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I have to say, we have had Mayor Jane Fox and Councilman John Reiner on Link Ahead, and we really enjoy getting to know our council members better, and we know our listeners are too.
One of the things that makes Dublin so fantastic is that we just really get an opportunity to find time and connect with each other, whether that's our council folks or our community, so delighted to be here.
Okay, fun fact, census data is a chief source of how $1.5 trillion in federal money gets dispersed and spent to governments, nonprofits, cities, towns. It also affects where businesses locate, hospitals are built, grocery stores expand to meet growing demand, things like that. So talk about how you and your fellow city council members use this information to plan for our future.
One of the things that has become so apparent to me since I was lucky enough to serve on council is the importance of forward thinking and forward planning. I mean, for cities, great cities like Dublin, to be successful, you have to be thinking 10 and 20 years out. And that's really hard to do on any given day to project that. But we have to. And so the census helps us think about the city historically and projection in sort of big 10-year lumps, and that's about how we do our planning. So very, very useful document for us when we think about housing and services and activities, et cetera. So invaluable, really.
Well, talk about some of the key takeaways from the most recent census.
Some of the things that we look at in council and certainly our city staff is to look at population trends, of course, growth. Not a surprise that how fast and how the city has grown. When I moved here in 1994, I have to think back, wow, how long it's been, there were about 15,000 people living here, and now it's 15 to 50 in that period of time. And the growth continues, and I think that's going to be an important factor for us when we talk about planning for the future. And the census, I thought it was really interesting. One of the anecdotes in there was in 2000, we had about 11,000 housetops here, and our households today are 18,000, or about 60% growth in just the last 20 years. So when we think about the future and what we need to do as a community and as a government, that's really important. And to me, one of the most interesting statistics was the change in really the average age of the population. So back to that 2000 time frame, the average age of a resident here was about 35. And today in 2020, or a couple of years ago in 2020, that was bumping up to close to 40 or a little over 39. That's hard to do, to change an average population that much. So that says, not surprisingly, we are an aging community, as many other communities in the United States are, and yet still also a young and vibrant community. So that's really interesting. The other thing that maybe is a little bit of a head scratcher is, given that change in age difference, the average household size has remained absolutely consistent for the last 20 years. In 2000, it was about 2.8 people per household, and in 2022, it's about 2.8 people per household. So we continue to be a community that attracts youth. We have great schools, and people stay when they retire. So what that means for services is going to be pretty important for us moving forward.
Vice Mayor, you are a self-proclaimed data geek, and we have to confess there's a few of us around here. So there's definitely a fun side to this, right, that all of our listeners can relate to. And what is it about data that you find interesting and fun?
Maybe one of the most fun thing that's happened lately, I hope the folks listening know that we've now named our snow plows here in Dublin
right?
based on a contest. And as fun as that is, one of the cool data things you're going to be able to do on our Snow Go. I think that's, Snow Go.
Snow Go.
Yeah, we got lots of goes. Dublin goes. Our Snow Go, we can watch these newly named snow plows work their way through Dublin. So, data is kind of interesting of what's been plowed, when was the last time it was plowed, when do we expect it to be plowed, all tied to some really great and fun names for snow plows. And that's just an example of how do you take data and make it really useful. We can think of others. We have a great mobility initiative in the city. And some of the things that data can help us do is not just talk about how many miles of bike trails we have, but how many people follow them, how many people follow a certain trail, et cetera. So there's just wonderful things that data enable and help us to talk about.
Well, it's no secret around Dublin that you love bicycling. You and your husband routinely hit the 140-mile shared use path system. And what remains on your bicyclist's wish list here in Dublin? What do we still need?
Lindsay, I would have ridden my bike here today except for it was raining. And I have to say I was really excited to learn that just very recently here, Dublin was awarded the silver level by the League of American Bicyclists. That's an incredibly elite award. As I understand it, we're the only city in Ohio to be silver certified, and there's only a little over 100 in the United States. So that says we have amazing trails. But if I got to wave my magic wand and do something else, I'd like to see the continued work about connecting our trails to other trails around the community. I know we're working to connect to the Heritage Trail and the Yolan-Tangi Trail, both of which I've ridden, but the ability to just get on the bike, go out your front door, and end up someplace different than you were yesterday. I'm a traveler, as you know, so maybe that's part of it. But that wonderful connectivity is great, and so I'll continue to champion and help in any way I can to do that work.
Every year at Dublin City Council Retreat, members discuss their goals for the city. Talk about how this census information helps inform these goals.
One of City Council's strategic goals for this next few years is to do what we can to ensure that Dublin is the most connected community in the United States and potentially the world. Among the factors that will drive that is a large initiative underway to bring fiber connectivity to the home here in Dublin, working with our partners to do that. We know from data that use of the internet is critical. It's probably as critical as electricity and our water and other things that we do as a community. So that's an example of what we see need in the community, data about what that, and transition that into large strategies. Another one of City Council strategic goals is to really take a look at our current festivals and activities strategies in the city and say to ourselves, what's the future vision for that? How do we take that 10-year vision and develop sort of the next generation? As we all know and love, we have one of the best Irish festivals, in fact, one of the largest Irish festivals in the world, where over 100,000 people come and celebrate with us each year. What can we learn from that, and what other festivals and activities can we bring to this growing community, and what might it look like?
An author named Peter Drucker, I know you know him well, wrote 39 books on business, and some call him a guru on management. He famously said, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Doesn't that boil down to what we're talking about here, just getting distinct measurables from the census to improve our lives?
I've read his books over and over again. I don't have much of a library. I'm better at reading than I am at dusting books, so we don't have too many at home. But I love his work, and he's got a lot of really, really interesting sayings. Some of those are things like, managing is doing things right. Leadership is about doing the right things. And one of the things that I think data tells us is not only are we doing things right? Are we meeting the service goals that our community has come to expect and should expect, but are we doing the right things? Where's the community going? What does the census tell us about what the next demands are going to be over the next decade? And, are we in a place to make those happen? And if they're not, how do we measure what we need to do, and then how do we measure what it's going to take to get there? And this community does that in an exceptional way, really.
Cathy, in Dublin Life magazine earlier this year, you said in 2022 you wanted to use your professional background in tech and business to support council's strategic goals in advancing our infrastructure, connectivity, and long-range planning in order to provide the workforce and residents world-class amenities and career opportunities. Can you talk about the progress the city has made toward that goal?
Yeah, I had the very good pleasure to both live and work in this community for well over a decade. And, one of the things that makes the business community so strong here in Dublin is that there's just such innovation, and there's such connectivity between businesses and such commitment to the community. But that only continues to be successful as if we have private-public partnerships and we listen to what our businesses are concerned about and where they're going. So I know the economic development team has done some amazing things. They just finished some work with career job fairs and had some incredible online success. So they're looking at ways and how do we take the technologies that are available to us and how do we connect communities with people in a time when it's really hard to find talent. And we can talk about example after example of ways that this community comes together to solve problems.
What are some things you're most proud of accomplishing?
One of the things that I strive to do when I join council and continue to work on is find ways to connect and communicate with our residents. We have a lot more methods, right, that we can do, that you can certainly do face-to-face meetings or meet activities, but we've got online, we've got surveys, we've got social ways. Because if we don't understand what's going on in our community, we really can't be successful. I'll tell you one other Druckerism that I really live by. One of his quotes is that the most important things about communication is to hear what isn't being said. And that is to really discover what the conversations are. You have to be out there. You have to be with people. You have to find ways to connect. So this community, the city, routinely has resident input sessions. We have connecting the parks. We find ways to be out and about and to hear not only what we receive in written communication, but to hear what's on people's hearts and minds and to put that into action. And I think that's what really local government's role is and really what makes local government great, and I'm going to continue with my colleagues to work on that.
I love that you said that because all of the council members really do listen. That is something that you continuously strive to do. So I completely agree with that.
We know you also love to travel, really anywhere, and particularly abroad. We just had Councilman Reiner on here, and he talked about some of the great European cities and bringing the best of the best ideas back to Dublin to make our city even greater. Have you brought some of those ideas from your travels into your role on City Council?
I think sometimes staff is going to want to turn off my email when I come home with a trip. I think they must have a button somewhere because I'm constantly sending them pictures or ideas about look at this parking place for bicycles. Look at this walking path. Look at this great architecture. But all joking aside, that's always embraced and everybody's excited to see what everybody else is doing. Somebody asked me, what city inspires you the most? And my answer is always the city I just went to last, because there's always something to discover. We can always find great things to bring back, and we could have a whole podcast on that. Happy to do that.
Was there one crazy thing that you're like, this might work, and then you didn't hit send on it that you thought, maybe we shouldn't send that one?
There's probably 35 of those just from yesterday, I often, like you do, you'll travel to major cities and you'll see these just amazing buildings, and you realize that if we were to put that building up, it'd cover like half the city. So I have to hit the delete button on some of those. But, no, even if they're crazy, I send them along because, what I find so fascinating is that when you share images, people see different things. So, I sent it because I thought X was important, but somebody says, oh, well, really that's the Y part of that is I like the front door on that. Where was that all my life? And so, the crazier the better, send them in. We'll learn from them.
Right.
All right. Well, we have a tradition here on Link Ahead to end episodes with some rapid fire questions. It's that time.
If one of your neighbors just bought a bike and asked you where to go, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them get on the bike and either turn left or right and just keep going, because there isn't a wrong answer here in Dublin. When you have, I think it's 140 miles, right, of bike paths, discovering it is fun. And what's also interesting is when you ride it in the reverse direction, you're used to riding from A to B, turn around and drive from B to A, and it's like, oh, I live in a new city. It's just amazing. Just get out there and ride.
All right, you worked for OCLC for 13 years. Libraries are in your DNA. What book are you reading right now?
I never read just one book. I've always got 3 or 4 books at a time. So let me share quickly a couple fun things. Nothing makes me happier when somebody shares a good book. So let me give it a whirl. I just finished a series called The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. If you haven't read, that's a 3-book series. It's a great audio book. I'll put a plug for our library. There's a lot of great free audiobooks for there. So The Thursday Murder Club, check it out if you haven't read it. For those that love to travel, if you haven't read Stanley Tucci's book, Taste, it's a fabulous book. And as we talked earlier, if you haven't read the 39 books by Drucker, you don't know what you're missing. So give one of those a whirl.
Favorite winter activity in Dublin?
This time of year particularly, I like walking around and seeing all the Christmas lights, We are a community that loves to just decorate and celebrate.
What is the question you get asked the most?
It's got to be about traffic. And then the second question about traffic, and the third question is about traffic. We talked about the numbers earlier, right, in the growth, and we have a great engineering group here in the city. We're really fortunate to have that. But when you have the growth and the number of households additions, you've got to be mindful of this. And one of the activities that's going on right now is the city's undergoing a traffic management policy review.
Mm-hmm.
As we speak, that work is underway and continues to be, but we know that's an important challenge, and we got to work on it.
In a few words, what makes Dublin a great place to live?
Anytime when your answer is like a kaleidoscope, there isn't one thing, right? So it's not a hyperbole to say we can put great in front of so many things. We've got great parks, we've got great schools, we've got great businesses, we've got great festivals, and it's all of those sort of coming together. There's just sort of something for everybody. I'll meet people who haven't been to one thing but have been to something and done something and I hadn't been involved in it. It's just that wonderful, just constant creativity and interest in making it the best place is what makes this city great.
So Dublin's a great place to live. On the flip side of that, what makes Dublin a great place to work?
We talked a little bit about that. There is an amazing set of professionals in this community. It's just mind-blowing. And one of the things that any professional wants is a network of other professionals to get together and learn from and connect with, collaborate, brainstorm with, and we have that here, and that makes it a great place to work.
And what makes Dublin a great place to retire?
My husband just retired this year, so we're finding that out together. And there's never a shortage of something to be involved in. We have an incredible volunteer community, just incredible. And so there's always an activity to be part of. There's classes at the rec center. There's just something for everybody. And you know what? Nobody doesn't want to continue to be part of a vibrant community. So when we say it's retirement, it's just sort of what next?
Well, you mentioned the rec center, so let's say pickleball or tennis.
Hubby and I just signed up in January to take beginning pickleball.
Oh, so excited.
Yes.
So I'm warning all the people at the rec center we're coming, and we'll let you know how it goes.
Bruce, maybe we can challenge them
That's
to
it.
a
There
match.
we go.
That'll be fun,
Yeah.
but they're going to know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're taking a class. We just went out there like a bunch of
Bad idea.
novices.
Give us a month, yeah.
Well, Vice Mayor Cathy de Rosa, thank you so much for joining us on Link Ahead.
Lindsay, Bruce, it's really been my pleasure. A lot of fun. Thanks for having me, and thanks so much to the community. It's an honor to be able to serve you.
And we want our listeners to know that they can see all of this census information on our website. Just go to dublinohiousa.gov and dive into some of that fun data yourself.
And to our listeners, thank you as well for taking the time to connect with your city. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the many personalities and experiences that make Dublin a thriving place to live, work, and grow.